Hi, this is Matt, co-founder of Second Pass, where we help people discover their potential for a global life. And this is Second Voices, where we get a chance to hear from people who are either dual citizens or interested in dual citizenship. Today, I'm here with Ben, whose mother is from the UK and whose grandfather was born in Austria. But obviously, his family history goes much deeper than that. So, we're going to hear from him a little bit about his family and what makes him interested in dual citizenship. So, hey, Ben, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, why don't you start off? Tell me a little bit about your family history in general.
Sure. So my family history, you hit the highlights of it, but essentially my on my grandfather's side, which is the part we'll be focusing on today, is my let's see, my great grandfather was a merchant and was originally from Latvia, but settled in Austria, and having escaped one conflict, landed right in the middle of another. Coming up through the 20s and 30s and 40s, and it was in that environment that my grandfather was born there. So he was, his father was Jewish, but his mother was Catholic. So he had a bit of a hard time fitting in with either group, and I understand that there were tight communities of both in Vienna at that time. But he was certainly enough Jewish to be persecuted. So with the war coming up, he escaped to England, and I don't know the full family history. I understand a little bit of it as it was passed down now, and working with you a bit and trying to do some more research, I found out more recently. But he ended up in England, where he went to boarding school. Uh, Eventually joined the Air Force there. He couldn't fly. He was colorblind, which is why I'm colorblind. So thanks, Arvid. And then after the war, settled in Manchester, where he met my grandmother and had my mom and her family before coming over to the States, and landed and ended up getting professorship, and stayed here, which is why I'm here. So yeah, a bunch of different stops. Hard to trace down, but it was really interesting once I started to look beneath the surface. Wish I had done this when he was around, but that's don't have that luxury. But been fun to do
Yeah,
just the same.
that's really cool. Super interesting. So, do you feel like, I guess, when did your mother come over to the US? How old was she?
She was 13 at the
Okay,
time. Yep.
okay. And do you feel like she maintained a strong connection to England?
Yes, she did, and certainly her family did. She still has a bit of a British accent. I can't hear
Okay.
it. But it's interesting whenever she talks to somebody with a British accent, including her family on her phone, it comes back in an instant. And
Oh
our
yeah.
mutual friend Joe also accuses me somewhat of switching accents whenever I talk to British people, but hers is honest to goodness right British because she grew up there. So, but yeah, to answer your question, she maintained a strong connection back there. Her sister ended up moving back. And so, growing up, we would go over there. We would try and go over there once a year, once every other year, just to see family. And my cousins also maintained a strong connection back to the UK, and ended up getting their citizenship and going to one. My youngest cousin went to school there at the University of Edinburgh, and ended up working for, I believe it's called the Foreign Service there in the UK. So.
Okay.
And now lives there. So
Cool. Do you know what attracted him to moving back to England? Was that something that you all kind of had like this strong familiarity with?
yeah, strong familiarity with and strong cultural alignment. I think so. I never did, so we'll have to ask her. But yeah, I think it was something that with much of my family living back there, uh, I think it struck her as an adventure, and it's an adventure that turned into,
Mm,
as you do, you go to university in a place, and then your friends are there, and your life is there, and then you get a career there, and lo and behold, you're there for decades, right? I I'm still here in the Mid Atlantic. I'm from Boston, but it was the same path for me, right? Not across the pond, but I think we all go down that path where we think college might be a short-term thing, and it turns
It
into
turns
more.
into more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have spoken to a couple people who have these connections with their other countries, and they visit every year. Like myself, actually, I used to visit Mexico once a year, to spend time with my dad's family. And the common thing is like having this duality of like having life over there, having life back here, and having them be totally disconnected. But then like internally, you are like, what are you more attached to? So I'm interested. Is that something that you would ever want to explore more? And I don't know how long you spent on each of those trips there, but did you build kind of a similar life?
Um, so, I would only go there for, a few weeks at a time. And I have a daughter now, so I think it would be a pretty unpopular move nor would I want to move over there. It would be a negotiation to say the least. Um, but yeah, I think, and I'll reflect more on my family's experience because it's probably a little bit more applicable. But, when they had the opportunity to go over there for university, right, I think that was something that, knowing they had the ability to get a second citizenship definitely enabled, and a unique aspect there too that wasn't for career, but certainly there was there was financial advantage to
Hmm.
being a citizen in the UK and going to school over there, which can't be understated. I mean, she got a really great education at a really great university. Thinking back, she's younger than I am, so she went to school after, but it's like, huh, man, that would have been really cool. I wish I had thought of that. But didn't take advantage of that. So, I think that um, in a different life, I might, but certainly, at least in my career, I'm in supply chain, a global supply chain role, getting involved in SAP implementation. Now I work at a global company, so I certainly see, me leveraging a citizenship to be over there more, if not, directly to, uproot and live over there for a time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know you and I previously talked about pursuing the Austrian side of your family history for, the EU aspect of citizenship. Can you, I guess, maybe go into a little more details on how that would change your career, like what opportunities that might open up? Anything around that would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, so as I said, I worked for a big global company, and seeing my family get the second citizenship, I've often wondered if it would be advantageous. Now, it was a lot more advantageous, of course, when the UK was part of the EU, and I always thought that would be really helpful in facilitating and making travel easier. If I did want to do a stay for a longer term, it would make that, you know, just fewer hurdles in the future. So why not take advantage, if I have the opportunity? So, luckily with my grandfather, maybe luckily is not the right term. He, given the circumstance, but at least for me, having the opportunity to get potentially an Austrian passport, an EU passport, and a UK passport, um, yeah, it would really, facilitate potential in my career and travel
I see.
ultimately.
Okay. Um, Yeah, and your situation is actually unique. Well, not unique, but one of the more interesting ones because Austria doesn't typically allow dual citizenship with the U.S. But because your ancestor was persecuted by the Nazis, like many others were, they have a special route for that where you can actually, maintain that dual citizenship with the U.S. and also have Austria, which is part of the EU. That's really cool. So, did you learn a lot about your grandfather's history through your mom?
Yes, I learned through my mom, and then also talking to him when he was around, especially near the end. He lived a really fascinating life, really exciting, to say the least. And I picked his brain about his scientific discoveries and his work, and tried to understand what he did. There was I'll share a short story if you humor me, where I was like,
Sure.
"Hey, what were your studies and your breakthroughs?" And he being of a generation before the internet, but very involved in academia in general, good with computers. He went on. He searched his name in Google, printed out the front page of the results, printed it out, put it in a letter, and mailed it to me. Yeah, he mailed me his top Google results, and so I thought that was pretty funny. But that was, part of, to get back to the question, trying to understand where he came from and the history of it. And frankly, I wish I had gone a lot deeper. Um, but and you didn't ask this, but in part of doing some of the research, and thanks for helping guide me through it, because you gave me some great templates and some great questions and kind of outlined the parameters that I would need to be able to get this. I actually started to do a bit of research and was really blown away with the amount of information publicly available, right?
Mhm.
I had never talked directly to, and now I knew that my great grandfather was a merchant, was a textile merchant, of some kind, but I'd never heard the background on his mother, but both through public records, and then also through community. There's a Jewish community in Vienna that kept good records, probably not too dissimilar to as the Catholic Church has the best records on probably most of the Roman Catholic world. There's a deep wealth of knowledge there that's now searchable thanks to the internet. And as I, even going in and searching his name, the pieces that he did leave me, the breadcrumbs, if you will, really helped me dive into the online research, and I found out a lot of things that are really plugging a lot of holes as I get in now. Not everything's directly applicable to the passport, getting a passport itself, but it's been a worthwhile adventure in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole deep dive into your family can be something that's like intimidating at first, because it seems so nebulous and like, how do you even get started? But the breadcrumbs, like you said, that your grandfather left you, I'm sure were a huge help. Do you have a specific example of like something he gave you that was like a clue that you started in on and then kind of went down a rabbit hole on?
Yes, so I think him being in the army would be a great example. So one thing that one trouble, so starting in on this adventure, I was like, okay, where are the great places that I could pull information? So I went to the UK government website, and he has a relatively unique last name, at least in England. So I Googled that name and got a bunch of records on him. Some of them were army related. And now there's a process there where you can retrieve those records. But I knew that they would be really important, because one issue I have with his trip over is that, like I'm sure a lot of refugees, it's not well documented, right? So I knew from my research on some of the Jewish archives, I knew exactly when he was born. I knew his father and mother, when they were both born, where they were born, where he was born. But there's this gap of, okay, now he shows up as a UK citizen on their public records in the early 40s, right?
Hmm.
And the laws are changing, but and I think it's easier now. But at some point, I was under the impression that I needed to show him coming over specifically to kind of prove that he was persecuted, and
Hmm.
I wasn't, I wasn't sure to the level of detail I needed to do that. If he came over after the war, right, which I know wasn't the case, but if I couldn't show that, uh, it would certainly make getting a passport harder,
Right.
right? So the fact that long way around, the fact that I knew he was in the army and I knew to look for that, helped set the timeline, had set the timeline a little better. Now, not all the records are publicly available online. Some of them are sealed, and again, I'm still, going through the process here. It's
Hmm.
sealed, but if you're a family member and you can prove that they've deceased, you can access them. So I'm still working through that process. But to answer your question, those little breadcrumbs, if you know where to look,
Hmm.
it can help you find the information you're getting.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you an insight into like his actual journey, which is really, really cool too.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
what are the specific documents that you found that show that journey?
So uh, on the family side, there is a little, and I wish I should have brought my show and tell here with me because it's kind of cool. But there's a little book that shows that the army basically gave him his orders and where he was deployed and when. and I have some photocopies of that.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I haven't gotten those records. We're unlike a lot of the folks you're talking to have gone all the way through the process. I'm relatively new to it,
Hmm.
uh, you know, fresh into it, so I don't have a lot of the results yet. But yeah, that was probably the main interesting thing. Also, my mother's family, they did a good job at keeping birth records. So my mother basically handed me a manila folder with a bunch of photocopies and old folded documents going all the way back to like the mid 1800s on her British side.
Hmm.
But mixed in there were some interesting tidbits from my grandfather as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. That's really
But for
cool.
anyone who's just kind of vaguely interested in it and think that it might be a big lift to try and prove a lot of this stuff, I would say don't give up before you start, especially
Hmm.
if, for you know, f- um, Jewish heritage would be a great example of right where there is a an exemption to getting these, or a path, I should say, to getting some of these, to getting the passports in Austria. Also, Germany, right? I think has a very similar policy. I would say, go online and do some research on Jewish history because I very much underestimated the record keeping in those
Hmm.
communities. And one thing, I should have included this at the time, but I did get his birth certificate as one of the first things, and in the top there was a stamp, and it was I could tell that it was something related to Jewish, and knowing the times I was like, I wonder if they were like marked at birth or something. But after doing some research, I found out no, it was actually the stamp from the Jewish community that they were, taking their own records and doing their own record
Uh,
keeping. So through that stamp, I found that community. Through that community, I found the archives and found out how extensive they were. So uh, I would say that even if you have a name of a relative and you're like, hey, I think they maybe come over. I don't know the story. I don't know where they were born. No, like
hmm.
all I needed was his name, and I was able to find out all this information through this community. And I won't even try and pronounce it because it's like a compound German word that I'm sure I would butcher. But
Well, we
yeah,
can link it in
those exist.
the episode description so that when people watch this, they can click on it because it sounds like a fantastic resource.
It
Yeah.
took me to the place of like, hey, I barely know anything about his voyage to, man, I have all these records of him and his family and where he was born. Like I can't not do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising how many of these resources are actually free and if you have the time and want to dig into it, you can really go pretty far. So that's really good insight, very good advice for anyone looking to do it. Um,
And I'm sure the cat probably, I didn't go down the path of Catholic Church or anything like that, but I would assume that, whatever your heritage is, there was probably a religious organization or otherwise that
mhm.
has some of those documents. And you can tell, right? There are hobbyists out there online, right? Heck, Wikipedia was all built out by people in their
Right.
spare time for the most part, right? So there's, you know, definitely go look. Take those little tidbits that if it's the town or the city they came from. Look to see if there was look to see how they kept track of birth records back then, because it probably wasn't just the government.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would go ahead and the of course, if there are government records, Army, in my example, definitely go take advantage of those. I think ship manifests, I haven't found that yet.
Okay.
I know that those are another popular way. I wish I could find that to truly prove that my grandfather came over pre-war and when. I haven't been able to. Of course, I don't know how secretive or not folks were being at the time there.
Hmm.
So that's another thing for my personal family's history that other folks might might have better luck than I did. But yeah, don't
Yeah.
give up before you start is what I would
Right.
say.
Great advice. I'm just curious, did you end up using FamilySearch.org at all?
No, I found some more specific ones that were
I see.
Jewish related. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the better thing really is to find, the background and go into the specific cultural organization that's fitting to your background, I think is probably the
Yeah.
takeaway there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, the government and the religious organizations are two big things. And frankly, I didn't need to go follow any paid service. I'm sure the paid services are great. I didn't go deep into any ancestry things because I had some of that. I know you can go there in person. I thought
Hmm.
about toying with that because a lot of those records are in person in England, where I can show up to whatever National Archive places and I can actually go see them, which might be a good excuse for a trip at some point. But for folks who are really getting into it as a hobby, kind of going down that path, um, that go take a trip, make it
Yeah.
make a long weekend out of it or a week out of it.
So at this point, since you still have a long way to go, but you've gone further down the path than maybe most have. Do you envision having a passport? What that would look like for you? What you would do with it if you did?
Yeah, so I am pursuing, both the Austrian and the UK one. Um, I think part of it would be traveling more, uh,
Hmm.
and just being able to, I have the TSA pre-check, I have global entry, right? This is like the ultimate, right? Now I can, if I want to stay for work, then that's possible.
Hmm.
Again, with my family situation, I probably won't in the near term, but certainly when I look way ahead in my career, and I see the opportunity to get this done now, wow, because who knows how these laws change, right? I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
so. I'm definitely trying to take advantage of it while I can, and be prepared for whatever the future has. One thing, and I'll go down a little side note too about wanting to stay, because again, my mom's side of the family, they're probably better examples of really good use cases of it. So they go back and forth, and my uncle now, who has a daughter that lives over there, he is a UK citizen, right? So he can go over there and go visit her for any amount of time. My cousin's older sister doesn't live over in England now, but has lived there for periods of time,
Hmm.
for her career, for fun, for the adventure of it. And I've seen them really be able to flex back and forth and take advantage of that, and not, be able to follow family in their case, right?
Right.
Because my mom's, as I mentioned, my mom's sister is still over there, so they lived over there to take advantage of it, and there was a degree of flexibility that was great. They were able to own property over there.
Hmm.
They were, able to get jobs over there. They were able to go to school, as I said, over there. So, yeah, I can see that. I probably won't go to that extent, as again, I've mainly focused probably on my career and travel, because
Hmm.
and frankly, that's a beautiful place of the world, right? The Alps,
Yeah,
amazing.
for sure.
But yeah, there's a breadth of reasons for
Yeah. It
yeah.
opens up your options. I think whether you're looking at it as something that is for travel or for potentially building a second life in the short term or long term future for retirement, it really just kind of gives you that option. And like you said, the laws eligibility in each country can change. Recently, we saw Italy kind of crack down on who they're letting, follow their ancestry. So the eligibility change, and then also the laws here in the U.S. can change. So it's something that's better done if the opportunity is there to do it, as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing for me is, so I know your co-founder, right? We're good friends, and listening to how quickly these avenues became available, and it's really been a game changer, right? And now seeing that this is not something that I should just get around to, is like, okay, let me jump on this now,
Yeah.
right? And I would certainly recommend, if anyone's thinking about it, go pursue it now. See whether it's going to be, as I said, don't give up before you start, because this is something that you could regret not doing in the future. You never know how work laws are going to change, or visas, right? We've seen that in different parts of the world in South America, where you'll have one party change, and all of a sudden you need a visa, or things are locked down, or things are opened up, and so yeah, I think there really is a sense of urgency here
Hmm.
that's driving it. So me, I have a fuzzy reason, right?
Yeah.
But but I would be stupid not to pursue it, especially you. And kudos to you, Matt. Thank you for your help.
Of course.
You know, you have the templates that you sent me. You're like, okay, here's the template that you need to send to the UK government. Just, you know, put in your name and you have it. You tell me who I need to send it to, what it needs to say, you know, fill in the blanks. It's really an easy process, and I wish I had started it earlier, frankly. But glad I'm doing it now.
Yeah, I'm really glad that was helpful to you. That's what we try to do for everybody. Um, okay, I think this was a really interesting insight that you gave, Ben. So thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, we'll continue to help you on the process, and hopefully we'll have a success story for you soon.
Absolutely. We can come back then.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
All right.